everyone do. So
Okay, perfect. This morning on the huddle, we're going to be answering the question that you've been asking us in the chat and in the emails in your comment section. Walter, how do I start a live stream show? Well, this morning, not only do we have a dynamic guest to answer that question, but we have a legend in the live stream industry. So do me a favor, grab yourself a cup of coffee, huddle up. It's time for the huddle. Praise the Lord, everyone. Welcome to the huddle. I'm your host, Walter Strong. If you're new here and you want to find your passion and purpose on YouTube, then we want to welcome you to the show. This morning, as I said, we have another dynamic guest who is going to break down the tips and the tools that you need to be able to start your own live stream show. And so let me read a little of his bio and we'll get into this interview. He is an award-winning social media manager, a live stream producer. He is the host of multiple live stream shows such as Social Chatter. And in my opinion, I'm putting it out here today, the top rated live stream show on StreamYard, live stream reviews. Let us welcome the one, the only Mr. Christian Karasevich. Good morning, sir.
how are we doing, Walter? Thank you so much for that introduction. By the way, it's a great introduction. So I mean, you're seriously just way too generous with all of that. I mean, here's the thing: I love streaming. I love helping people, and so I try to put like as much effort as I can into making a show and spending time with people and helping them. So, but thanks for all the kind words. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's true. Plus, even your fan club, your haters have even given me the 411. So I had to put it in the bio once your haters started to acknowledge you. But those of you who are watching us on YouTube, let us know where you're watching us from. Put us in the chat. We are also streaming live in the Huddle Facebook group. So let us know in the chat also so we can acknowledge you. Let's kick this huddle off. Christian, tell our viewers how you found your passion for social media, live streaming, and just online video. How did you find your passion in this?
I gotta say that's a tough one because if I go back to like when I made my first like YouTube video, it was
Mm-hmm.
like I love technology, I love gadgets, and just I'm a tinkerer. I love figuring out how it works, like making things work and then explaining that to people. Like I love doing that. And so, I was like, I think I was in the middle of I think it was an iPad and I wanted to run like something that required Adobe Flash. This was like I
Mm-hmm.
think my first YouTube video. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna make it. Let me just try making a video. And I made a video. The audio was terrible, by the way. The lighting was bad. I didn't have any other. I was using my laptop camera. I think I did all the things you shouldn't do, which is like have a window behind me. I was doing all of that. I did the video and it's like, oh, this is actually this is really catching. Huh, that's pretty cool. And then I've been doing it for quite a long time. I mean, back until like I guess early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing it there, and then I was like, oh well, I can apply this to like my current job that I was in at the time. And they were wanting more multimedia, so I was doing a lot of that. So I've really always been involved in making videos and always just inquisitive about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of that natural progression has been, okay, I learned iMovie. Now, okay, let's push the boundaries a little bit and let's make it a little more advanced. And then the key thing is you got to keep pushing. It's not, okay, I learned how to do something and then stop. You got to keep going. So yeah, so that's kind of how things have evolved. And I got into the streaming aspect because streaming is just another form of video, and you just have to decide whether you want to make if you want to make a pre-recorded video or a live stream video.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's my story. And it's something that again, you just got to continue to evolve that.
Definitely. Definitely. Let's get into these 5 tips because live streaming has really taken off. I mean, I'm seeing entertainers like Brian Culbertson. For years, I've watched John Campion from the John Campion Show. He's showing live streaming for movie reviews to even YouTubers, and live streaming is really just taking off. So let's get into these 5 tips. Tip number 1, how do I, as a beginner, as a new YouTuber, begin to create a show that addresses the needs of my audience, especially when I don't have one?
So I got to say this. I think the first thing is you do need to build that audience. Like you can do a show if you don't have, because it works against you. It feels like it works against you. So if you don't have a show, if you don't have a community and you're just streaming out there, for example, like you're in an empty room, like they're going to be really long and hard days of, is this actually worth it? The thing is, once you get on the conveyor belt, you can't really stop. And so you will get a lot more traction, if you can start to build that community at the beginning. But in terms of like creating a show that really addresses like the needs of like your audience, everyone can, or I don't say can, everybody should have live streaming as part of their strategy, and the thing is, part of it's like finding what your passion is, but also making sure that what you're doing is sustainable. And so like, we talked about like, like it's one thing to come up with, like, oh, hey, I'll do this show. And like, you do it for like a month or maybe a week or something like that. But you have to also make sure that it's fun and that you enjoy doing it. Don't just do it just to be doing it. Like, for example, there's a lot of people, they say, when you're working through something, like you get to what they call the messy middle, where it just gets really hard. It's a slog. It's something that, it's just not fun doing. And it's like, oh, you have to push through it. But it's like, yeah, you need to push through it, but you also need to be doing something you really want to do. So, when we talk about streaming, like there are various ways to do this. There's pre-recorded video, there's live streaming, there's also behind the scenes. And so, for example, if you're not somebody who likes to be on camera, maybe behind this, if you got to be technical as well, by the way. But if you're not technical, for example, you're not comfortable on camera, you're like, you may want to just like, you may want to do other things besides getting into video. But if you're somebody who like, hey, I actually do enjoy being on camera. It doesn't bother me. I'm comfortable. Start doing pre-recorded videos, start doing live streams, start streaming to a private Facebook group that it's only you, and watch yourself and say, okay, well, what do I do to improve this? And then the other thing also I'd say is like, if you're a technical person, this is where like, if you're a technical person, but hey, you don't like being on camera, you don't have to be. There's people that do live streaming, but they do it for other people. So for example, we could have a producer right now, Walter, running things. If you're like, hey, I'm not good at multitasking.
Right.
So like, if you're not good at multitasking and you're trying to run the show and you're trying to be the host, you're trying to wear all these hats, it's about finding the right position for you that you can put your gifts into.
That is a great point. A great point. We want to say good morning to the one, the only Mr. Paul Andre Devara.
Yeah, Paula. He was on my Launch Your Live show, so it's great seeing you, Paul.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, all the way from California. All right, that's my best take of Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Oh, Tupac. I'm sorry. Much love to Tupac. Don't want to say that's Tupac's jam. Tip number 2.
Sure.
And before I jump to tip number 2, that was a great point in terms of, like you said, learning to cut your teeth. I remember when I first started the Huddle originally started as a show that was for men coming together, huddling up to encourage one another how to talk about manhood issues. Okay. And I would invite other men in the church. I would invite family members and friends. And so I was cutting my teeth, had no interviewing skills. Like I said, not having any skills about how to do live stream. Yep. Fresh out the gate, learning how to just do online video with YouTube. And I've cut my teeth for over 2 years. And then I graduated and starting to interview other individuals in the YouTube in live stream circles. So like you said, that is so important.
And I got to say, Walter, on something like that, I mean, I like the point you made about like cutting your teeth on things. So there's various ways that you can gain some of those skills that you need. So if you're brand new to it, like everybody always says like, hey, just push the button. And it's like, no, well, yeah, sort of, but not really.
Right,
Like
right.
if you just push the button, like that's great, but you do have to be able to also say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to push the button, but I'm also going to be critical of myself. I'm not going to be critical in the sense that like, oh, hey, you know what? You can't do this. Like, I'm not going to be negative towards myself, but I'm going to actually be open to saying, you know what? I did a 1 hour interview. Let me look back at it. Let me see what I did better, what I did well at. For example, I bet on your intro, you probably toyed with various things of how do I start off the stream?
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing was though, like you didn't just do it and say like, okay, it works. Like instead, you probably did one or multiple versions of it. You said, hey, you know what? I feel more comfortable with this one. That's
Mm-hmm.
going to be what we're going to do for every single show.
Right.
So you have to be open to feedback also, by the way. So for
Sure.
example, I know you've come on live stream reviews quite a few times, and like the show is like where we have people come on with their streams and we take a look at their streams and help them through some of those challenges that they're facing. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, it's also being comfortable like about putting yourself out there as well. Like, and so if you know that you don't know something, don't be
Mm-hmm.
afraid to like reach out to other people that can help you because they can help you faster and get through some of those areas where, you need the help, but you really don't know what to do. You're kind of stuck.
Man, that is a powerful tip right there. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this discussion this morning, 5 power tips of how to start your own live stream show on YouTube in 2021 and 2022 to stand out. Drop down in the comment section and give us chat section and give us a hashtag value. And to those of you who will watch the replay, give us a hashtag replay in the comment section. Tip number 2,
Yeah.
which I liked how we transitioned into that, having a live stream that's very interactive with your viewers. And
Okay.
that's what I like about live stream reviews. From day one I met you, I think I had just got through doing a huddle. I was still on YouTube and I'm like surfing, and there you popped up, and I came on, and I think, no, it was the second show I came on, and I watched how you made it interactive and different from other channel reviews.
Mhm.
And so from day one when you launched it, how did you come with with the secret sauce of making your show so interactive with your viewers?
so
I
here,
need your secret sauce,
so
Kristen.
here's the thing. The crazy thing is there, so you know how like McDonald's makes the Big Mac, and they don't ever tell you what the secret sauce is for I think they still make the Big Mac, right?
Right.
They don't tell you what that Thousand Islands, or sorry. They don't tell you what their sorry, that was actually totally random, by the way, but they don't tell you what their secret sauce is. And so the thing is like that they put on that burger. And so like the thing is with that show, I don't really like, seriously, like in all honesty, the way that we normally would run things was we would not actually like, I just tested putting the public link out there for people to join. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was really up to us to figure out what worked and what didn't work. And that really was the secret sauce there. I mean, it's crazy because like, yeah, doing it like the streams, they're very long.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we were really intending. But at the same time, like as long as we were seeing interaction and engagement with the viewers, like we were going to keep doing it. Now,
Right.
going back to that point that we just talked about, which was, sort of being critical of yourself. Like one thing that we've been doing a lot lately is we pay attention to like what our viewers are telling us. So for example, they were telling us like recently, like, hey, like we used to not have a timer where like people come on and we'd kind of go through their questions. And
Mm-hmm.
so we've started to scale that back to where like, okay, you know what? It's no longer like an open-ended timer. Hey, everybody gets 5 minutes or 7 minutes or something like that. And we stick to it. And the thing is, like we just did the last show and we stuck to
Mm-hmm.
the timer. And at one point I was looking at the clock and I was like, oh my gosh, we've actually gotten through a lot of people and there's still time on the clock.
Right.
And so
Right.
that was one thing that like, in terms of like making it interactive, like, I think that like we've started to sort of adjust some things, but I think the key thing is you find what works, what doesn't work. And then you start to, like you talk about like buying like really like well-made goods. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like for example, let's talk like Apple products. Like when iPhone 1 came out, by the way. So I had an iPhone 1,
Okay.
and when iPhone 1 came out, I could not copy and paste. I could not, like there were a lot of things that it has today that it
Mm-hmm.
did not have at the time.
Right.
And so the thing was, it's all about refinement. So it's like coming out with, you know, some people will nail it the first time and some people will not. And so, it's about doing it the first time, for example, come out with version 1, get it
Mm.
out there. That's the key thing. That's when people say push the button. That's
Right.
what they
Right.
really should mean is get it out there, but refine it. So get it out there, for example. And so like we did the first episode of the show and it's like, oh, it went really well. And I also go in with the expectations of, well, episode 2 is probably not going to have the same numbers,
Mm-hmm.
but hey, if it does, fantastic, right?
Right.
So, go in there with version 1, get it out there, and then refine it along the way as you're doing it. And that's one thing, like, how you talk about, like, I think you go live, like once, was it once a week now or?
Yes. Every Saturday at 11 a.m.
So, one of the big things for being successful with live streaming, it's not about like going live every single day. It's about, like, for example, if you're like, hey, I'm only going to go live once a month. Look at it like this. You have 30 days in between your one episode and your next episode to improve it.
Yes.
Now, the problem with that is if you're only going live one time a month, that doesn't really help. Like that really draws out that timeline.
Sure.
And you know how people are like, hey, play the long game on things. That's a really long game.
Yeah, that is.
And so if it were me, I would say, you know what? Okay, like instead of going live once a month, that means you go live 12 times a year. That means you have to have some really good episodes. If you want to get things done faster, you do need to go live more often. And that could be pushing yourself instead of once a month. Let's do it twice a month.
Right.
Let's do it 4 times a month. It's not to say like, oh, you need to go live 30 times a month. Although that will, like, as long as you have the bandwidth to do it, great. But 2 times a month is very reasonable. And
Sure.
so that's going to be a good learning opportunity for you. It's going to be a way for you to, to see, what, like, for example, should we, like, I'll give you an example with our show. We did the show every single week. And then we said, you know what? Oh, wow. That's like, that adds up. Like, that's like 20 hours a month practically of, because it's not just the streams, it's prep time and all the other stuff. But, I'm like, oh, that's 20 hours a month. Are we getting, 20 hours of value from it? Are we over providing value? And so the thing was, we said, okay, well, let's scale it back to 2 times a month. And I got to say, the thing I like right now is that because we scaled it back, it actually makes me miss it more.
Okay.
So I miss it when I come back. Like, I think we have a show next week. When I come back next week, I can tell you right now, like I was like today, I was like, oh, I'm ready to do this show. But I'm like, oh, shoot, I got one more week, right?
Right, right.
And so you have to kind of figure out what that formula is that's going to work for you. So it's constantly improving it. So the more frequently you can go live, the, you don't have to do it every single day, like I said, or multiple times a week, but more than one time a month is ideal.
Definitely.
And that's going to help you build a much better live stream, I think, at that point, because you can test different things. You can learn more from your audience. That's the other thing. It's all about you talk about, how do you build interactivity and engagement in your live streams? It's all about your audience. It's not about you.
Yes.
So, if, for example, if we did that show and like the first episode, like if it totally like didn't work, or hey, it worked, I wasn't going to quit after like week 2 or week 3 or week 4. I have to have a baseline to measure that against. So, so I need to know, okay, like, is our audience up for once a week? Are they up for 3 hours? Are they up for 1 hour? What is that they want to see? And then as the host, you give that to your audience.
Definitely. And also in terms of, like you said, when you're first starting out, not being ambitious to try to do a 6-hour live stream, whereas maybe you need to do maybe a 15-minute live stream or a 30-minute live stream, and then just evaluate as you go, as you were saying. So, which is critical. It's funny. I tell you a funny story. When I did my first online video on YouTube, not even thinking about live stream, my first video was over 45 minutes when I did it. And I was like, man, that's a live stream. And, and I go back and refer to it in terms of I had so many topics put into one video. And of course, I've learned, but it told me I have the potential to be able to do a live stream. I just need to be able to, like you said, cut my teeth, learn how to put in the reps in the work.
Well, and so I'll give you an example of that as well. So you mentioned my show, Social Chatter, at the beginning.
Yes.
And so honestly, that show, when it started out, it was like 4 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
And it was me literally just going through a whole bunch of topics, and there wasn't a whole lot of focus at times. And
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that I also sort of struggled with would be sometimes I would have had a guest. Sometimes I had a guest on, and that guest was very talkative and it was very engaging. And then other times I had a guest on, it was really long. They just wanted to be on talking, and I was like, I don't have the time to just be here like 4 hours, kind of just talking
Mm-hmm.
randomly.
Right, right.
And so the thing was, like, that show was like 4 hours long, and then I scaled it back. We did a cut to, I think, like two. Like, again, we didn't go from 4 to like 30 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
it's taken years, but because again, the show is the longest running social media marketing news talk show, and like we've scaled it back. We did 4 hours. We did, I think, to 2, and then we've
Mm-hmm.
scaled it all the way back to like right now. We've tried to do 1 hour. We've even scaled it back. And I say try because it's hard.
Yes.
We said, hey, you know what? We're going to make it 45 minutes. And the thing is, it's hard to do 45 minutes. You got to stay really on task and focused. And so, again, it's trimming the fat from things. It's making things as lean as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you mentioned, really focusing on the topics. Because again, like, you also have to look at who your audience is. Like, if you're covering like 50 topics, you got to make sure, can your audience consume 50 topics?
Right.
Or is it really just 1 or 2?
Right.
So,
And definitely. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this discussion, is we're talking about 5 power tips of how you to start your live stream show on YouTube and to stand out. Drop down in the chat section and give us a hashtag value. To those of you who are going to watch the replay, we are so appreciative to you. Put in the hashtag replay. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know where you're watching this from, and also in the Facebook group, as we will acknowledge you. Tip number 3, and this is so important. I think I should have just left it at having great audio, because if you have bad audio, everything else is just bad. But having great audio, lighting, and a quiet place where you don't have the circus in back of me. I don't have the circus in back of me. Why is that tip so important, you believe, for not only just new live streamers, but existing live streamers? Because I even see some ones that they got the circus in town behind them.
So that's a great question. Why is audio so important? So think of it like this. It doesn't matter if your video quality is great and people can't. What's the most important part of live video? Let's start with that question. And the answer is, it's not video, it's audio. Audio is the most important part. And the reason is because people want to be able to hear what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if your video quality is bad, for example. Like, you shouldn't go into it with the expectation of like, oh, I have bad video. For example, this camera that I'm using right now, I turned it on and the quality was not like it for what it is. The quality was not where I wanted it when I turned it on.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, I didn't just say, okay, well, I guess that's what it is. I figured out why it wasn't good and I worked to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the thing is, if you're like going into a live stream, you want to make sure that you are in a quiet environment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for example, and I'll give you like 2 examples here. So
Sure.
One is like, if you're doing like interviews and your environment, like if the people you're trying to reach, if there's a lot of stuff going on in the background, for example, like, you want to make sure that, like, if it fits with your stream, like, for example, if you're doing something with coffee, or you're doing something where like, the background or the clinking of plates or things like that is ambiance, then that's fine. But if you're in an area where like, hey, I'm in a small space and I really don't have, quiet space to myself, all of that noise can be distracting. And so you kind of have to look at it like, it does help, but it also can hinder your streams. Now, audio, though, just audio in general, like microphone audio is key. So if you're going to start live streaming, the best piece of advice I can give you is to get a good quality mic to start with. For example, the Samson Q2U is a great product to start with. It's a USB and XLR microphone. You really don't, the real thing you just need to know there is that you can plug it into a computer with USB. If you have XLR, it has to be plugged into a mixer, which means it's going to cost more money to get started. But it's about a $70 microphone. It's a great mic to start with. And so the thing is, it will level up your built-in microphone, for example. So if you've got a built-in mic, on your laptop, then that's something, you want to make sure that you're trying to get the best audio possible, because studies have all shown people actually listen to your live streams. They don't care if the video is like, if you want to go into it and do the best to get the best video quality that you can out of your setup, which means having enough lighting. Like your lighting has improved dramatically since since you were on live stream reviews, for example.
Thank you.
It's about making sure that your camera actually can look good, but you want to make sure that so that's it's baseline. And then making sure you sound good. If your internet, for example, is okay, and the video quality is not great, but hey, the audio is good, people will listen. So you always want to focus on getting the best audio quality. The other reason why I always recommend, by the way, that Samsung Q2U is because if you are using the built-in mic on your laptop or even your phone without a headset, for example, the microphones do not sound very good at all. They might sound like you're far away, or if you're typing on a keyboard, certain mics will pick up a lot of noise. And so that's why you always want to make sure you focus on getting the best audio, because again, your viewers will watch, but they obviously will listen, because if they can't hear it, but they can see it, they don't care. If they can hear you, but they don't, if your video quality is not oh, it's perfect, they don't care. What's important is the message, and they need to be able to hear the message. They can't, if Walter, for example, do me a favor, mute your mic.
Okay, hold on.
So Walter's going to mute his mic, and he's got great audio, right? He's got great audio now, but when he mutes his mic, he's going to have great video, but we can't hear him. And so that's going to distract from, how about this? I'll just mute mine. Okay. So I'm going to mute mine actually real quick. So yeah, so Walter's going to mute his, here, let me just,
okay, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead. You got
my audio. And so here's the thing. I'm going to talk, and it's oh, I got good video.
So right now he's with his mic muted, and you're like, well, where'd he go?
Right, exactly. And that's also so if the mic gets, for example, if the mic quality is not good, say the internet's going in and out, the mic quality is not good, or, for example, you and I were talking about this earlier. I'm going to move my mic out of the way. Okay. So you should hear, that sounds different, right?
Correct. Because you're distancing yourself from the mic.
Exactly. And so if I'm doing something like this, right, it changes what people tuning in. Hopefully, by the way, people keep watching. It doesn't really, sorry about that.
No, but that's a great analogy. That is a great analogy.
So you want to make sure you have good quality audio. And again, that's also one thing Walter and I both do, by the way, with that. Is that me? I think there's some feedback, right?
Yeah, I do have some feedback. Hold on.
1 second. That's actually me, I think. I moved the mic, and then so I'm not going to touch the mic. So that's one thing that Walter and I, for example, did before the show. And this is a tip for everyone who's getting into streaming. Don't just show up and start your streams. Show up, and Walter and I showed up 15 to 20 minutes ahead of time. We made sure that the mic was good. We made sure that the video was good. But the key thing was we spent the time on the mic to make sure that it sounded good.
Right.
Because you want to make sure that people are tuning in. And so, again, so don't blow that off either. If you're starting streaming, get started, but make sure you also spend time with your guest at the beginning of the show. Don't just rush them into the show. Hey, we're on,
right.
Spend, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, you can spend time. Walter and I had a good little chat beforehand, but at the same time, we worked on the audio. We made sure it sounded good because we knew that, hey, I'm in my seat. Think about it this, I guess, a performer, somebody who's, if somebody's on Broadway, or they're even in a high school play or something like that. Think about it like this. The people who prepare are the people who typically succeed at things.
Correct.
And so you don't just want, they don't just show up and all of a sudden they're doing their lines. They show up hours beforehand. They do their makeup. They get their costume ready. Everybody's in place before the actual show is about to start. And so my tip for you would be, make sure the audio is good, make sure the video is good. Every single type of camera you have, make sure the lighting is good. For example, Walter has amazing lighting right now. And here's the crazy thing. You would not know this. He's using a $70 Logitech C920, right? 920,
yes.
922, right? He's got a Logitech C920. I will tell you this. I tested out a Logitech C920 when I first got into live streaming, and I said, oh, well, people are using it. It must be good. and I didn't have the lighting, and I was like, "Ooh, this is not very good." I was expecting it out of the box to work really well.
Right.
What it comes down to is that you have to provide other things to help it.
Mm-hmm.
So in Walter's case, he's got great lighting, and so his camera is going to perform better. So
Mm-hmm.
he's got that, he's done a good job getting his setup there. He's got the mic there, for example. If he wanted to, he can lower the mic. If he wanted to, like I've lowered mine out of the shot, so he can lower it out of the shot if he wanted to, where everybody's able to see him more. But he's done a great job with the lighting so that the video looks good. And that's a super easy hack, easy way to get started.
Wow. And then the last tip on an audio and lighting, when you're first starting out, don't eat your microphone. I think I was falling into that trip.
Actually,
that tip.
I want to take a step back. Actually, it's don't eat your microphone, but the other thing you got to pay attention to is make sure you get the right kind of microphone.
Okay, gotcha. Hey, I'm getting so much great value out of this. To me, I'm here with a legend here, and so just to hear from day one he met me to where I'm at, and I'm still in progress. I'm still working on it. So that gives me great hope to know that the huddle was adding great value to you, the audience, and just we're just going to continue on. Tip number 4,
Actually,
making your go ahead.
but before we go into tip 4, can we talk microphones?
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
Let's take a few minutes on
Yeah, sure.
microphones.
So the reason I said you need to make sure you get the right type of microphone is it really depends on what the setup is going to be like. So for
Mhm.
example, if you're going to be on camera, like doing interviews like we're doing right now, you want to
Right.
have something like that Samsung Q2U. You don't need the Shure SM7B. You don't need the $400, $250 mic to get started. You just need a good quality mic to get started. And so, like that Samsung Q2U, it's a great mic to get started. It's one where you need to sing into the microphone. You need to speak into the microphone.
Mhm.
So
I'm
it
writing this down
needs to
here.
be at the right height, for example. And the reason I say like make sure you get the right type of mic because there's that kind of mic you can get. There is the Blue Yeti, for example. And personally, I would actually get the Samsung Q2U over the Yeti. The
Mm.
Yeti has a cool feature where it's got a little knob on the front where you can change the microphone pattern. And so
Mhm.
what that's going to do is like if this is the top of the microphone, for example, you can have it where it's only accepting input from the front of the mic, which is great for an interview. But you could also flip it and say, okay, well, I want to capture a group setting or things like that. It's called omnidirectional.
Okay.
But the key difference there is that mic, it does sometimes have like I'd say leakage, and so
Mm.
that sound leakage. And so what will
Okay.
happen is you will be in that mode where it's like a condenser mic where you're talking right into the mic, right? You
Mhm.
have to have it in front of you to speak to pick up the sound, right? Correctly. But the problem is that sometimes when you switch the pattern, it doesn't close off all the other mics. So it picks up every little thing you do. Your chair moves, you're typing on the keyboard. Even though it's a condenser mic, it's still picking up all that stuff. And it's also
Okay.
really heavy. It's on your desk, all that sort of stuff. And so, you want to make sure you get the right type of mic because there are people that like, they buy what do you call it? They buy like, what do you call it? Shoot. There's a shotgun mic, a Rode shotgun mic.
Okay.
And so if you think about it, so like if you're filming a scene and you want to capture audio and you want background noise and all the other stuff going on with it, that mic is
Mhm.
great for that. But some people will try to use it for all their streams. And it's like, well,
Oh.
it's capturing everything in the room, which means air conditioning, fans, chairs, keyboard, you bump your desk, all that kind of stuff. So you
Mhm.
want to make sure you start with the right type of mic because there's lots of ones out there. Like I said, Samsung Q2, great mic to start with. Much better over just the webcam mic or the laptop mic. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And on the tip of interviewing, and
Yeah,
let's
sure.
say
Yep.
because this is an interview type live stream show,
Sure.
there's so many out there like video influencers,
Hmm.
Coffee with Shine Cannell, and other YouTube type shows that are doing interviews. When it comes to guests, um, and you have a quality of guests like yourself, they would know these things. But when you're starting out, you have to kind of work with your guests to kind of find out. And I think this is where discovery calls come in, what they're working with, so that way you can prepare them for the show, and they can have a good quality audio experience as well. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. So you definitely want to make sure that whatever like you want to make sure that as a host that you're preparing your guest.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to, like we said this earlier, like make sure you have them join your stream ahead of time. Just join 5 minutes ahead of time. You got to remember, it's a sort of a symbiotic relationship like that. You want to make sure that like there's give and take.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to make sure that like if you're having a guest on, it's your stream. It's not about it. It's about them, but it's also your show. And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to make sure that you, so like, for example, if Walter had me on and let's say I showed up 2 minutes ahead of time and I'm like, and let's say, okay, so Walter told me show up 15 minutes ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say I showed up 2 minutes ahead of time. And granted, you know, we've realized life comes and life happens, but
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I made a commitment to Walter that I would do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, hey, show up 15 minutes. That's also your reputation as well as a guest. So when he says, hey, you know what? Show up 15 minutes early. Okay, I'm going to show up 15 minutes early. Do I need to do a lot of prep with him? Not necessarily, because, you know, I know how to get my mic right and things like that. But if, for example, like, you know, it depends on like who you're having on, but you want to make sure that every single guest you have on, that they know, like, that they are prepared,
Mm-hmm.
that they're prepared to show up ahead of time, that you do your due diligence and you give them the topics. Like Walter gave me all the questions ahead of time. You know, he said, hey, you know, because you don't just want to put your guest on the spot a lot of times.
Sure.
So, you know, make sure that you prep your guest ahead of time. You give them the information ahead of time. You know, if, for example, if your guest is like brand new and it doesn't hurt to ask when they're booking time with you, if they've never done a live stream before, you want to make sure that they know exactly what they need to do, what they need to do to prepare.
Correct.
So, for example, you know, one like you could like I always tell people try to be in a quiet environment, but we know that doesn't always happen. So
Right. Okay.
if somebody has to be on like a phone, make sure that we give them like a 1-sheet document that says, hey, you know, thanks for joining the huddle. The huddle is, you know, here's what the huddle is about. Here's the audience we're trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what you could do as a guest to help us, i.e., here's the link for you to join. Here's the public link if you want them to share it out. For example, here's an image you give them to share out. You know, do you have expectations? Like, i.e., show up 15 minutes ahead of time. For example,
Mm-hmm.
you as the host help them by giving them a calendar invite or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you take you basically help them, and then they help you as well by being prepared. Because again, if you have a guest on and your guest does not prepare, they just show up and they're kind of blowing you off really,
Mm-hmm.
like that reflects on you as well for your show. Like it reflects on you in the sense that, oh, you know, people might look at it and say, well, hey, Walter, like, oh, he has really bad guest on because his guests never seem to be prepared. So then they might not think it's the guest. They might think it's Walter.
Right.
Right?
Ultimately, it's going to fall back on you because your name is on the
Exactly.
door.
Exactly. I like that example. Your name is on the door.
You
And so-
got the star on your door. So
Yeah.
exactly.
And so, and here's the thing. The great thing is, like, if you're just getting started, you should start building that document as you're doing more live streams.
Mm.
So, for example, the first few are going to be like really hard. Like they're going to be hard in the sense that there's a lot of moving pieces. But you need to make that easier then for you is you need to build a one-pager, a one-page document you send to every guest, and then you build it as you're going along. So, for example, like I used to do everything manually, meaning, you know, I'd say, oh, hey, Walter, do you want to be a guest on my show? He says, yes. I'd send him, you know, like, well, you know, hey, what's a good date for you? Like I didn't have any booking system. The thing is now I have a booking system where all I have to do is say, hey, Walter, you want to be a guest on the show? This is what the show's about. If you do, here's a link to go book. I give him the link. He goes and books it in a separate service. It has questions that it gives me all the, like, it's like, you know, hey, what are your social media handles? It tells them things like, you know, is there anything you want to promote? Is there like we talk about a tool each time? Is there a tool you want to talk about, for example? What's your area of expertise, or what are some questions? So there are things to help me build that show.
Yes.
And then I also have one thing at the end, which is like, instead of me having to go chase Walter for like, hey, I need an image to put on the promotional graphic. I say, you know, one of the questions is, when you're finished, send us an email with an image, or send us an image, attach an image here. And then this way it's a lot easier, so that as I have guests on, like as your show starts to grow, you can start to like just put out that link to multiple people, and then you start to get everything booked. And then you don't have to do so much hand holding with every single guest.
Right, definitely, and it helps more with the prep, and that's what I really appreciate. I believe in giving flowers when people are alive, and that's the reason why I appreciate you so much, Christian, and helping you pushing me to go to the next level in the booking aspect. Because once you kind of get to a certain point down here, then
Yeah.
another area will take away from the prep time, so I can put more into the show. And the same thing, like when I first met Benji, and when I brought him on, he did some of the same things, and he said, I really need you to focus on building the show, but focus on the booking aspect of it,
Right.
because that's going to be so much key for your preparation for your content. And I really appreciate you both for that.
And you can use tools like Calendly, for example. Like, so when we talk calendars, by the way, and booking guests, it's
Mm-hmm.
not, we're not sending, Walter and I are not sending emails back and forth to one another.
Right.
We're sending one link. It could be one email that says, "Hey, thanks a lot for, for agreeing to be a guest. Here's the link to go book the time. All the information you need is there." Like, that could be all I send him. And he doesn't have to necessarily get in touch with me until, and the other thing is, it's not like I don't have to send him reminders.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. That's the great thing about using a booking tool. I'm not going to Walter and saying, "Well, hey, Walter, here's my Google Calendar. Go pick a time." The great thing about these shows, these programs like a Calendly or a Harmonizely, is that when you like I have different shows that I run. Walter, I think you do too, right?
Right. Yes, I have a sports show that I do as well, right?
And so what we can do is we have separate calendars. So, like, for example, let's say Walter said, "You know what? Hey, I only do this show once a week." So he has a separate calendar just for that one show. And it's got all the questions and everything that people need to answer. So he sends one link out to the guests for that show. And then when's your other one?
I was doing it every Thursday night, so I'm getting back into it. That would be once a week, every Thursday night.
Okay. So instead of doing this, instead of commingling everything and saying, "Oh, well, I'm gonna send all these like things out," right?
Right. Right.
What's gonna happen is if you just send them all out individually and everybody's booking, you got to remember, oh, well, did they book for the huddle or did they book for my other show?
This is true. Yes.
And so the great thing about these, the Calendly apps and things like that is that you can have separate calendars for each one, and then you dictate when those recordings are. For example, my show Social Chatter is only on Thursdays.
Okay.
So I have a specific calendar link that I send out for that. It's geared just for people on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other show I do, that one I have like, I think it's like on a Monday sometimes. And like, it's like at, 8 in the morning. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Here's the morning, here's the link to book for that if you want to book. And then it commingles inside of the software, but it doesn't commingle with all the people trying to book. So,
Okay.
And it saves you so much time.
Boom.
Cool.
We're getting great value out of this discussion. 5 tips and more how to start your own live stream show. Drop down in the comment section, the chat, and let us know with a hashtag value how much you are being valued. Additional tips that we will provide: making your live stream and replay with the view. And I learned this from you as well, because like you said, when you're doing live streams, sometimes they can be 1 to 2 to 3 hours, but your live stream reviews are always made where I can go back and watch them as a replayer and get so much value out of that. Why do you think, and I'm going to direct this more to existing live streamers, why do you think sometimes we fail to capitalize on keeping the replay in mind?
I think part of it is, I don't want to say laziness. So it's not being lazy. I think part of it is time. I think time is a key thing. A lot of people, like, for example, if you do a live stream and it's, 3 hours long, for example, or even 1 hour, you have to, like, unless you have a producer helping you, making notes and like, or you have certain like, or you're making notes of like, well, when did this moment happen and that moment happen and that moment happen? A lot of us, what we end up doing is we just put it out there and we're like, okay, we're done. We move on to the next thing. And then the thing is, we wonder like, well, why isn't this working? Or, why is the needle not moving here? And the thing is, it's because we're basically just turning on the hose and just letting it go. Right. And the problem with that is that you need, like, there's often a lot of value in those live streams that people can pull out. But the thing is, I think part of it is their system. It comes back to systems.
Mm-hmm.
Their system is not necessarily set up to really like help them with that. Instead, it's a whole lot of extra work. For example, when people do live streams, like one thing I do with mine is I turn them into a blog post. Well, that means now I'm not just spending time making the live stream, but I'm also have to find the time to write the blog post and things like that. And so then I have to I have to make the social posts, things like that and whatnot associated with it. And so the challenge you run into is that a lot of people, what they'll do is, they're not going to do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where like you need to make it easy on yourself. I like to give the example of like squeezing juice. Like it's like you want to squeeze as much juice as you possibly can out of every single episode before you throw it. And I don't say throw it away. Like for example, if it's like an orange, you squeeze the orange, you get as much juice out of it as possible to where like there's nothing left. That's when you get to the rind around it, and then you throw the remnants in the trash at that point.
Okay. Gotcha.
Now, in the case of your live stream, though, it's like you do your live stream, but you need to keep squeezing. Squeezing it meaning you need to pull out some of those little segments. A lot of people are like, well, hey, I don't know what to put on my social channels. You know what you should be doing? You should take your live streams and you should be chopping them up into pieces and pulling out those best moments. For example, Walter, what was one of the points that we made earlier at the beginning? It was like one of the first like golden nuggets we kind of shared.
Talking in terms of one of the golden nuggets. I'll just pick one in terms of how you talked about being able to have great audio.
Okay. So I talked about like, for example, how you should have great audio. So for example, that could be a social media post. And the thing is, it's literally like a sound bite or a 30-second clip from this, or even 15 seconds from this recording. And so we pulled the 15 to 30-second clip out.
Okay.
And then what we're doing is we're sharing that on social, and it's like, here's a key, takeaway from the huddle with Christian Kirsevich, on why you need good audio. And instead of making me instead of making somebody go watch that full live stream, you're pulling out the segment and then you're saying, hey, you know what? You want to watch the full episode? Here's the replay. Go watch it. So, the big thing is like, we don't usually spend enough time doing that sort of thing. We make it once and then we expect somebody's going to go watch it. So you talked about how live stream reviews was 3 hours and, a show is 3 hours, for example.
Right.
And the thing is, you got to think about your viewers as well. So I mentioned this at the beginning, pre-recorded and live content. A lot of people, they will go and watch, like they might tune into your live streams, but if you look at the analytics, I bet you will see this. You will see it's going to go up and then it's probably going to flatline or completely drop. And so you have to look at, for starters, do you make a pre-recorded video or do you make a live stream? Because pre-recorded videos are going to have typically more staying power. They're going to be shorter. You're not going to make a 3-hour pre-record typically. You're going to have a very short video. And if you look at the analytics, you will likely see that it's doing really well. So you want to make sure, but the downside to pre-record is that pre-record doesn't have that live engagement like we have, for example, like we're doing right now. So you kind of have to find that balance of what type of video works best. So for example, you could do a 3-hour live stream, but you want to then make sure you have some sort of video that drives, like pulling out a little piece of that, sliver of it, driving back to the full one to get people to continue watching. So
definitely. Hey, I want to give a shout out to those of you in the Facebook huddle, Mr. Lewis Rollins II, Mr. Al Hive from Casual Highlight. Wanted to give you a shout out. I know it says here on StreamYard, Facebook user, so I had to jump in the huddle on the Facebook side and say good morning to you guys for checking in on the huddle on the Facebook side. Tip number 5, according to our script, we've had so many great tips here.
Yeah, sure.
I put on here, have great energy for your live streams, but I'm going to change that. Why is it important to have great passion for your live stream?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, okay, so let's take both those angles actually.
Okay.
So passion and energy, so you want to make sure that you are passionate about the topic that you're talking about. So for example, I could talk all day gear, so for example, going back to your, you talked about how like our streams are like 3 hours long at times, right? Or we try to scale it back to an hour and a half. Here's the thing. I enjoy it so much that I'm not like, I'm physically tired after, 3 or 4 hours of being on camera, constantly taking questions from people, but I enjoy what I do. And
Mm.
so, the thing is, it's not like you don't dread, oh, well, I got to do this stream this week.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make sure that you find something you're passionate about. It also helps, though, as well, when you're passionate about something, it also helps you stay motivated. So, as we mentioned, like there's going to be times where like you're not going to have any viewers.
Right.
But you know what? As long as and passion is important because you want to make sure that it's something that you can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So like I will talk about, I can talk about a topic like, for example, tech, gear, live streaming. I could talk about all that stuff because I like it. So, because I'm passionate about it and it's something that like I eat and like breathe and like sleep, like all of that, then I'm passionate about it. And so I'm going to want to keep going. And
Mm-hmm.
so energy is also important because, again, if you're talking about something and you like, let's just like, I will say maybe there are some topics that you're not like, you're passionate about, like the topic, or
Mm-hmm.
sorry, topic, like you're passionate about like what your show is about, but you're not passionate about the topic. Yeah,
Mm.
there are going to be times where you want to do the show, but hey, oh, you know what? This week we're talking about something that like maybe you're just not like totally energized about.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible. But the key
Mm-hmm.
thing is you got to make sure that you find the right, like what your show is going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to find, got to make sure that like your show, whatever you create, is something that like is sustainable. That's something that you're not going to get bored talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not going to get bored talking about it, that there's enough content to talk about. There's plenty of content for most of these things, but you got
Correct.
to make sure that it's something that like you want to, you don't mind talking about it every single week,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And then that's going to like, if you're passionate about something, it's going to help you bring the energy to it because it's a topic that interests you. Like
Definitely.
for Walter, like for example, like, do you have any ideas or examples that we could share?
In terms of ideas for a live stream show.
Just like passion, like just industries, like for example, like let's let's talk about something boring. So let's talk about taxes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If a person is passionate about doing
Like
taxes.
exactly. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
passionate about like if you like doing taxes, but you also are, passionate about like not like passionate about like money in general, but like, hey, you know what? I want to like your goal is you want to help people so that they don't have to hire you to do their taxes. For example, you
Mm-hmm.
want to empower them, right?
Okay. Gotcha.
So you are passionate, like you'll do their taxes, but you also want to make sure you're educating at the same time, right? And so
Correct.
for some people, that's like, oh, you know what? Oh, I don't want to do that. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
not their thing.
Right.
So there are going to be people where like, you know what? That's going to be their passion and they're going to go all in on it. And they know
Mm-hmm.
it inside and outside. They don't get bored talking about it or talking about like, various terminology, things like that, right? It's
Right.
stuff that
Right.
they light up when they talk about it.
Right.
So then that
And
means that like that's gonna be something that they're probably gonna want to do a lot, and
mm-hmm.
they're not gonna get bored with the
Right.
fact that like, oh, if they do a show every week, they're not gonna get bored every single week talking about taxes. But for some people, hey, you know what? That's not gonna work for them. If
Which
you're
is
into
true.
if you're into cooking, same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like you like being on camera, you like, you could start a show on like, I mean, the other thing is like, there's so many examples out there. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're, for example, into cooking, look at all the different cooking shows that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Find one that you like. What is it you like about it? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying, hey, copy them. What I'm saying is find something that you like a format of a show, and then see
Right.
if that format works for your show. And then you bring your personality, you bring your energy, you bring your passion to what you're doing. So, for example, like like Gordon Ramsay, for example, you know,
Yes.
he loves cooking. He also loves
Mm-hmm.
teaching people. And so the thing is like that shines through in what he's doing. Or like who else do you have? You have like and I'm not too well versed in a lot of these people's bodies, but like
Bobby Flake. You have Bobby
I'd
Flake.
play
What,
Rachel Ray, I think was doing it some like yeah, you have all these
Tom.
people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Martha Stewart, they love the topic. I was saying like they love the topic they talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So like you'll see them do that, but you know what you won't see them do? You won't. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe their hobby, something that they kind of like to dabble in, but they haven't made it their full thing,
Mhm.
is woodworking or something like that, right? So you got two
Mhm.
different things, and the thing is, you gravitate towards the one thing that you're passionate about, that you can bring the energy and talk about, and you love helping people and you love giving back. And then you know what? On the side, you're doing your woodworking thing.
Mhm.
And at some point, maybe the woodworking thing becomes the thing you want to do. You can always change, but you don't, you want to make sure that you're putting your energy into the things that you're most excited about.
Right. And because that's what's going to carry you through those times where you only have 1 to 2 viewers or no viewers at all. When I think of passion, I think of being able to address you having the abilities and skills to address a pain point in someone else's life. You have the skills, and then it's almost like Liam Nelson says, I have a particular set of skills that you can address a person's pain point. And so even if you have only 1 or 2 views, you're so passionate about it, you'll still do the show because you're doing it with the replay in mind. Still do the show because you know there's an audience that wants to be able to listen to your content. You'll still do the show even though you have a few viewers because you're still working on your audio or your lighting, being in that great place and having that energy and passion.
Yeah, well, and I mean the key thing is, again, with just about all of this, you got to make sure that you are like, and you made a great point just a minute ago.
Mhm,
Like what you're like doing, like you got to do things that you love doing. And
mhm,
I think the other thing is like you don't get, like you can always like start and stop and try some different things, but like you want to make sure, like I was thinking about this the other day. So
mhm,
like you think about like an athlete, okay?
mhm,
And an athlete, like they're doing one thing really well. So for example, they're going into like, they want to be a good basketball player, football player, baseball player, for example. They're putting their
mhm,
energy into one thing that they're really good, that they know they have the skill at. They just need to now develop that skill.
mhm,
And so like throughout life, like we can like switch back and forth between things, but the people I think that are most successful are the ones that are sticking to the same thing
mhm,
and really like dialing it in. So like the key thing, is find what it is like you're most passionate about, go into it, but
mhm.
also be, willing to also make adjustments to fix it along the way. Like you mentioned a second ago, like if I, you know, for example, like, you have people that like, well, so for example, you had people that like are in sports and like, hey, they start out as two, uh, a two sport athlete.
Correct.
They can't do both sports.
Right. Bo Jackson. I think Deion Sanders is a great
Yeah.
example of that. Yes.
And so they can't do both sports. And the thing was, they could try, but they had to make a choice at some point between which one they want to do and which one's going to kind of be their little hobby. So it's
Mhm,
like find the one you want to do, put all your effort into it, and get really good at it. Now, going back to that point you last just made about people that only have like 1 or 2 views on a stream,
mhm,
you need to be regularly reviewing what you do.
mhm.
So like for example, if you're doing it and you're getting like, if you're doing let's just say you've done like 10 hours of live streams and you got like 1 or 2 views on it, something's not working.
Okay.
And so and that tells me like, okay, you know what, it, like you can't just do the live stream, put it out on your social media channels and say, okay, great, like, oh, I want people to tune in. You need to build that. And so that
Mhm,
means that's things like, for example, if you're just going live and you're not getting people to tune in, it means you need to go outside of your own sphere. It means you need to
mhm,
go outside your own circle of people. It means you need to network with people more. It means,
mhm,
for example, if you're like into cooking, well, I'll give you an example.
mhm.
Canva. Okay. So Canva is this design product. Walter, I think you use it for some of your graphics. You
Yes.
can use it to make graphics, and their goal is to help you make better graphics. But the thing is, um, you may not be the best designer. So there are, for example, so like if you're like, hey, you know what, I'm going to do Canva tutorials about something,
Mhm,
and the thing is, it's like, okay, well, if you're pretty good at design, but like you don't have an audience built, you don't have a community built, you need to go find that community and start building it.
Mhm.
And so that's where like you'll want to go, like if you're into design and let's say Canva's your thing, you're talking about Canva tutorials, go and watch other Canva people that are making tutorials as well and
Mhm.
see what is it they're doing. Like some of them had a really good audience and they already transitioned into that, but then other people like they just, what they did was they started having guests on, for example, like people that could help them take bigger steps as opposed to taking all these little single steps like, oh, yeah, I got one person this week, I got one person next week, one person next week, one person the following week. At some point, like you don't want to just do that.
Mhm.
You need to be making adjustments, small tweaks to your shows.
Okay.
And if it's not moving the needle after like a month, don't give up. You need to then say, okay, well, how do I reach a different audience? Because maybe my audience is in the right place. Maybe
Mhm.
my audience that I am connected with are not the people that are wanting to watch. So
Mhm.
how do I get in front of other people? I have to go network. So for example, going back to my Canva example, people can go to Canva and they can go, um, you know, Canva's not like like if you're into like getting into doing tutorials and things like that on that topic, go join other like fans of Canva, like Facebook groups, things like that,
Mhm.
and see what kind of work they're doing. For example, ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Find people that already have done it and ask them what they did. And, most people will give you some ideas of what they've done to help build things.
Definitely. Hey, if you're getting great value out of this discussion on the tips and tools of how to stand out in having a live stream show, give us a hashtag value. And in the replay, hashtag replay. A bonus tip before we close this great show out,
Mhm.
Christian, is the importance to have great live stream software. There's so many things of them out there. I'm going to promote StreamYards because it taught me how to be able to stop depending on other platforms like Zoom, which is really for a meeting or a conference
Uh huh.
type software,
Yeah.
which is good for what it is. But live stream it when I really needed to take my game to the next level, StreamYard is, to my opinion, a great software tool that you have to have as a
Hmm.
beginner. I
Yeah.
mean, I know you represent them. This is not a
Right.
plug, and none of this is sponsored by
Nope.
StreamYard, but I just want to just get your feedback on encouraging new YouTube live streamers on why they need something like StreamYard.
So I'd say this. I think the key thing there, and I think you made a really good point, by the way. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people they try to, for example, they try to use the meeting software you mentioned, and one of the biggest challenges with that is that it's for meetings. Like it's for like if for example if we were having like a let's say we're having a round table with like
Mm-hmm.
50 people at once, like and we wanted it to be almost like a closed meeting or something like that, or we did want to broadcast it out to people. It's ideal for that. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, like, but the thing is, it is actually pretty complicated once you then like go into actually like learning how to use it. And so like it really comes back to like picking the right tool for the job.
Mm-hmm.
So like the great thing about StreamYard, is that we're the easiest way to live stream. Like
Mm-hmm.
anybody can get up and running. You can also sign up for a free account, by the way, and you know, you basically just bring the idea, and then you can do all of that within StreamYard. So for example, Walter, I see you've got your branding up there in the top left corner. You
Mm-hmm.
know, he can put in a logo if he wants to. He can have videos. For
Mm-hmm.
example, he can create that show, and because
Mm-hmm.
again, it's all about getting your message out there.
Right, right.
And so if you're just getting started live streaming, and here's the thing, I'd say this, it's for beginners all the way up to advanced users. There are people that
Right.
we use it for like a lot of advanced things. So like people use it for meetings. They use it to, reach all of their social media platforms. For example, their LinkedIn lives, their YouTube lives, their Facebook lives, for
Mm-hmm.
example, so they like, it's not just a beginner tool.
Right.
It can scale with you. And
Right. I'm just
so,
kind of
yeah.
going through some of the tips and things like
Oh yeah, sure.
banners and
Yeah.
scrolling. Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I think the key takeaway is what a lot of people like, I talked about like tech and gear and things like that. A lot of people fear the gear.
Mm-hmm.
They fear the technology. They're going to break something, things like that. And the great thing is all you have to do is show up, you bring the idea, and then you bring it to life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great for, all different types of users. So I think that's like super important. And I think the other thing that's also, just great about using it is that, again, like it's easy to get started. it's easy to get started, but powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And again, I mean, it's like you said, it's about like I've actually been using the software like long before I was even, here. So,
Mm.
and so like it's the thing that like, it just works. You don't have to worry about like, hey, well, my internet like isn't great. Like it works with you,
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Definitely.
yeah.
Okay. I wanted to pull up this one comment here.
Yeah, sure.
Paul says, good conversation. Hashtag value. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before I let you get out of here, Kristen,
Yeah, sure.
3 things you wish you knew
Ooh, another
before
question.
you
Okay.
started live streaming.
Let's see. So I think the first thing is it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be number one. So for example, when I got started, like I said, a lot of my shows were like really, really, really long, and then I started to make some changes to them to tighten them up to improve them. So it doesn't, it does not have to be perfect. You need to just start doing it though, and once you get on that conveyor belt and start doing it, and then refine it and things like that as you're moving things along, improving the process, it's going to be great. And so like, you gotta like, don't worry. Like, for example, if you have 1 or 2 people tuning in and you're like, but you're like so worried about going live because those 1 or 2 people are going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Big deal. You can go look at my YouTube channel and like, you can see my first YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, it's not that great,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing was I had to get started doing it to figure out like, how it worked, like what I liked, if I didn't like it, things like that. Like, so you do need to get uncomfortable. So, okay. So number one, what I wish I knew was, don't make it perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I think, let's see, number 2 is it's not about the gear. So the only things you really need to get started, good audio.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I were putting any sort of money into things, a mic would be a good place to start. Samsung Q2U, the Samsung Q2U, about $70. That's a great microphone to really enhance your audio that you currently have. So you get that, you get a pair of headphones. You could use StreamYard, for example. You don't need a super fancy camera. Like if you do want to get a camera to get started, get the Logitech C920. You can always upgrade. You can always repurpose that camera at some point. So it's not like, oh, well, I'm going to upgrade to like $1,000 camera, like, tomorrow. No, like use it. And then you can repurpose that camera, for example. So don't fear the gear. Again, get started with what you have.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the third thing is, and this is sort of like a 3rd/4th thing, I guess. One is, I wish I had networked more with people, because you'll find that the more networking you do, the faster you can grow together. Versus if you're just trying to do everything yourself, it's you're in a way your own worst enemy, I guess, at it, which is you can potentially slow yourself down if you're only able to move at one speed.
Right. Oh man, that is a tip that I'm gonna chew on all through this week. Learning how to network. And I'm gonna tell you why I struggle with that. I'm gonna be a little transparent here in a few minutes. When I was in the music industry doing hip hop, and I recorded my first rap record back when I was in Detroit.
Walter, I'm gonna have to hear this, by the way.
Okay. I was in hip hop from like about 88 through 92, and I did my first rap record. If you look on YouTube, I found someone actually posted the song on YouTube. So the YouTube channel I found it on was called Black Watch, and the song is called Running in Fear. And then you probably have to put Rhyme Fresh Productor. And so I record my first record, but I made a mistake that a lot of young hip hop or even R&B artists make. We don't read our contract, or we don't get an individual like a lawyer to help us read our contract.
Okay.
So as a result of that, I made the mistake, lost the rights to several of my songs. That one was recorded and other was that wasn't. And so because of my mistake of not getting a person to help me read my contract, it created this distrust in me about other people. Because this is my baby, my live stream show, my YouTube channel that I'm trying to use to help reach other people and add value to. And so because of those past mistakes, I sort of put that on other people unknowingly that, well, okay, I'll become a part of a community, but I only go so far with you. because I'm like,
Okay.
you're only in it for you up to a certain point. I'm only into it. And so that's something as a creator, I have to learn to overcome,
Yeah.
especially when, like, I'm a part of the StreamYard community. I
Mhm.
comment from time to time, but I don't go deeper because of
Okay.
that fear of someone may try to take advantage of me, or through my ignorance, I may allow someone to take advantage of me.
So to that point, real quick, I mean, because I sort of struggle with this as well. It's like you got to find what that balance is.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and what I mean by that is like, okay, so like you can be as helpful as you want to,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say set some boundaries. And what I'd say for something like that would be, because the thing is, you've got gifts, you've got information, you're really knowledgeable about something, but if you hold it back because you're scared of like somebody taking advantage of you, like set aside time. Like for example, say, you know what, every day I'm going to give, because remember, it's about the networking aspect. So
Yes.
like
Okay.
if you're not out there, it's the whole out of sight, out of mind thing. And so, in your case, like you could say something like, every day I'm going to give 20 minutes every day, responding, going in and checking things in the group and like responding some things.
Mm-hmm.
And then that helps keep you out there, but it also helps condition people to know, hey, you know what? Oh, Walter doesn't respond very often. Oh, it looks like he only responds once a week or once a day for like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And so by doing something like that, I think that's going to help you still be out there, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's one of those things that it's going to also help you feel like you're not necessarily getting taken advantage of. So, and
Mm.
value yourself, by the way. That's the other thing. Make sure you value yourself.
Man, I'm going to put that into practice. I'm going to put that into practice. All the description of where people can find you at is in our description, but just let our viewers know if they want to get in contact with you. What's a
Yep.
good place where they can reach out to you?
Oof. Wow, that's tough. I mean, I put my Twitter handle on there, but I think like, I mean, seriously, you can just private message me.
Okay.
I'd say, heck, you can even just go on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
look me up. Christian Karasevich, obviously super easy to spell
Right.
there.
Mm-hmm.
But look me up and just send me a private message. A lot of times I'll tell you this, like if you send me a private message, like you could also just add me as a friend and then
Okay.
send me a private message. I think that'll actually pop up. I think it triggers me actually seeing the message versus, just sending me a message and hoping that I saw it.
Gotcha.
So
Definitely.
yeah.
Well, Christian, again, I appreciate you so much taking time out your schedule to be on the huddle.
Thank you.
I've learned so much today. Our viewers have learned so much today. And so, question of the day for you, those of you who are on YouTube, who are still watching, on Facebook group, and those of you who will watch the replay, what are the challenges that you are facing that's keeping you from networking and going to the next level in online video and live streaming? Drop down in the chat, drop in the comment section, and give us your feedback so we can encourage one another to get to the next level. And so again, we want to thank you, Christian, for being a part of this live stream. You shared so many nuggets. We're gonna definitely chew on this all week. This is a piece of content you can't just watch one time and just think you got everything.
Awesome.
There's so much to it. So thank you. And so as we close out, we always close out saying, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that will prevail in your life. Make a quality decision today and allow God's purpose to prevail in your life. We will see you on the next huddle. Me and Christian will chat off air. You have a great Saturday afternoon.